Are you knee deep in the trenches of Set 5 Legends of the Forest deck building, getting ready to make a splash at Galactic Championships in 50 days? Or are you getting ready for a PQ at the end of June? I think that's when they end. Trying to make a splash, trying to spike it with some cool new brew. What's up, guys? KTOD Matty here, hitting you with another SWU Academy video on deck building, Legends of the Force Edition. This is a topic I talk about kind of a lot, and I like to revisit just about every meta. I'm sure I'll be repeating a few things, but the main point is it's good to review our process and kind of remember the fundamentals of deck building when we go to build for a new set. So I have 3. That's right, 3 tips, tricks for you guys to, principles for you guys to look at and kind of consider when building a deck in this new world. And those are: 1, have a lens. I think it's really important to have kind of a thing you're trying to accomplish. And so, one of the lenses that I would point people to is like, I'm trying to build the best Overwhelming Barrage deck, or I'm trying to build the best Great Dragon deck. I'm trying to exploit the best leader, say Han 1, right? We've seen Alex Landon make a pretty good living out of that. So what is my lens for the deck? What is the main thing I'm trying to accomplish? Am I trying to just play the busted card and give it some tools, right? Or am I trying to, enact a play style? What is the best aggro strategy? And then you explore, leaders and things like that. So that's the first one, and we'll explore that more in detail in the video. The second one is have intent. Every card in your deck should have some intent, some thoughtful process behind it. It's easy to just slam in cards because they're good or because they fit the curve, but like, is that the actual right card for your deck? Are you going to be playing New Kiamundi, or are you going to be playing K2SO, and why, right? These are the questions you have to ask yourself. A good example of this is like, I'd see some of the Han 2 stuff, right? I think like Dameron had a really good reasoning for why he played heavy in his list, and he compared it to K2. That's the kind of question I'd like you to ask. I didn't play either of those cards, but that's not the point. The point is the question, the intent. He had very strong intent there. So if you haven't seen that video, go check out his channel. All right, and the third one is plan for meaningful interaction. There's a lot of times where I hear people give me these magical Christmas land lines, or they say they've goldfished the deck or played against themselves, which actually, I'm going to strike that last one. Playing against yourself can be very good. Playing against, say, a system that is not going to meaningfully interact with you is what I'll say. So you need to plan for that. And some examples of that would be, and just to pull back a second, like, this could also be, this is like the precursor to like finding your pain points, which is something I've talked about in the past, because you need a place to start. You need to like anticipate things that you're going to run into. So this would be like main decking Confiscate, because of, a prevalent upgrade meta, or this is main decking Bounce because you need to be able to meaningfully interact with your opponent. They might, like, I'd imagine we're going to see a lot of people try to play sticky 2-drop and put a General's Blade on it, right? We need to be able to meaningfully interact with that. We can't just play Goldfish style, is the point I'm trying to make. So we'll explore more of that in the video. So those are the 3 tips that I'm going to talk about. I think they are very helpful. And again, nice to re-examine these things for beginners and intermediates and experts. It's always good to review your process. All right, so lens. Let's talk about our lens. I gave examples of, let's build the best Overwhelming Barrage deck. I think that's a really good one because Overwhelming Barrage, its ceiling is insane. It can be a one-sided Wrath, or board wipe, sorry, for those that don't know what Wrath of God is. It's a great place to start. Crate Dragon, while expensive, is kind of one of those cards that can just win the game, right? Han 1 leader, a resource manipulating, or Han 2 leader, shout out, a resource manipulating leader that can take over the game early. Building the best aggro deck, right? we would look to Sabine, and then you see the people who went yellow and the people who went ECL, and how they accomplished that. They had intent behind their deck, right? For this example, we'll start with one of the new cards. Let's build the best, and let's see if I can get it on the first try. Nope. Let's see if I can get it on the second try. Let's build the best Darth Vader deck. I think the new Darth Vader from Legends of the Force is a great card to try to build around. It's very strong, powerful ability with that on attack, and when played, if you can pair it with ambush, right? The common line of this card is insane with ECL, but it is kind of true here. Let's give this card ambush and try to build around it. So, Vader, right? We need to get it attacking as soon as possible. How do we do that? Well, I've talked about it, and it's not up here, but ECL, Energy Conversion Lab, obviously one way to do that. That would put us in green. What else can we pair with it? We'll talk about Sheen Flurry at the end. Timely Intervention. I've loved how Timely Intervention has made a really big splash in this current meta with Data Vault decks playing 3 of it. This will give you ambush. Yeah, it's for 7, a little more expensive, but I think the ability's worth it. 8 in the late game, right here. Admiral Piet, kind of a pet card, but again, one that does work pretty well here. Vader costs 6, get an ambush. Piet works well with the other Vader because you can go and grab him and then come back and ambush with something big, or ambush with the smaller Vader. Pretty good value there. And then another one, kind of more of a niche card, but like you could Modi it, right? You could get it untapped. It doesn't attack right away, but it's going to be pretty insulated in the fact that it has a shield, or can shield something. So you could try like something like Modi. And then obviously there is Sheen Flurry, a pretty powerful ability there. Obviously you can't smuggle it like Timely, but you get some damage prevention. Not as relevant, I think, but it is because you could put the shield on something else, your sided shield, right? So, okay, those are our options. Now, I will say we'll talk about Sheen Flurry first. When using something like Sheen Flurry, because we will be basically 2-for-1ing ourselves, we'll be using 2 cards to deal with, presumably, actually probably 2 on their side, right? You get the ambush and the thing. However, you need 2 cards in hand to be able to accomplish this. So you're going to want to pair this generally with either card draw or a deck that really is okay going down on cards. So that would be something very tempo aggro oriented, something like maybe Talzin paired with yellow, right? You're playing that Force style. You're using the yellow tempo cards like some Bounce and No Good to Me Deads and things like that. And then you're okay kind of getting rid of 2 cards at the end of the game because that's where you're probably going to end it, right? You have a lot of these nice new hidden Force users to be sticky, things like that. I think Talzin yellow could be a route. Another one would be Thrawn, blue when defeated Thrawn. There's a lot of when defeated card draw abilities now. I think we got another one in a 2/2 Force user. And so if you want to use 2 cards out of your hand to deal with some things, I think it pairs really well with card draw. So new Thrawn could be a way to do it, and you're in this blue-yellow kind of deck, and you have like that new Knight card that like kills a guy and then replays it. That could be a thing that you try to accomplish. You could do that in both Talzin and in Thrawn. And then the third one I would try to pair with it is Chancellor Palpatine. Obviously it has a draw engine there. We're going to be very blue oriented. We've seen my teammate Wu kind of build this like very blue heavy Chancellor Palp deck. That could be another angle that you go when building around Vader. So our lens is, how do we make the best Vader deck? We pair him with ambush, and we go. Now we have a couple routes. We have the Sheen Flurry route, very strong, powerful ability, card ability, and we have the green route, right? And then as we fill out the deck, guess what? Darth Vader works well with Overwhelming Barrage. It is a big unit. That's probably a bit insulated if it shielded itself. We already could be going into command green because of the ability to ECL and maybe play Modi and probably play Timely Intervention, right? That's like an angle there. And so then as you kind of support the deck. Oh, how do we get to 6 faster? Well, we put in ramp, right? Those will be some of the intent things that we'll talk about. And then the other route would be like, what's a good new leader to build around? We talked about Talzin, but what about Obi? I think Obi is a really cool leader. It's like it can take a similar take on as Ray if you go the blue route. I like the fact that you can kind of bump higher cost or higher power units, right? As long as they haven't been bumped up yet. And also, like, there's a good yellow version with the Padawan, the yellow Padawan card, and then the nice Force card that, if you have the Force, it comes into play untapped, or readied, rather, and then you attack with it, you get the Force back, and then you can pump it again. So that's pretty neat. So OB would be like, how do I build around this leader? And then we go, okay, I am going to pair it with like the best start possible, right? The yellow, like you have the 2/5 Gungi, you have the Padawan, things like that, and you kind of build out the deck there, trying to exploit this this front side ability, and we'll talk more about that too. Next up is going to be intent, and we'll talk a little bit more about intent. All right, so let's talk about intent. I'm going to show you a very early testing deck list that I've built, and we're going to go through every single card and why it's in there, and I'll try to do it quick. All right, Crystal Caves Obi, we're talking about exploiting a leader that we think is strong. I think Obi is going to be one of the strongest Legends of the Force leaders. So Bounty Hunter's Quarry. Bounty Hunter's Quarry is in this deck because Obi pumps dudes. I want to be able to get more dudes out there. This is cheap. We're playing a lot of cheap things. I am trying to see if I can exploit one of my pet cards in a deck that needs new friends to bump up. All right, Hotshot Blaster, a great way to value trade up, and finish the game, pressure your opponent. Hotshot Blaster is a great value resource. I'm going to talk about the first turn plays. Anakin Skywalker, a mediocre 2-drop, but has the Force to get our Force train going. It also has the ability to give us some reach in our Falcons, in our shuttles later in the game. Hoping to find some more early drops that I like, so that way I can maybe finagle it, but that's the best at what we got going on right now. We are prioritizing getting the Force early. We need Force 2-drops. Gungi, talk about getting the Force going early. 2/5, very sticky. Sometimes there's a best in slot. I think this is fighting for it. Best in slot, 2 command hero drop. Where's a General's Blade? Very well, right? Luke Skywalker, another, I would say, mediocre 2-drop. But the real intent here is the 3 power. One of the things I found in a lot of other decks is when you're playing into something like Sabine ECL and you start with a 2/3, right? Anakin would be an example of this, and you have to be mindful of that when you play them. Sometimes an ECL deck will just ECL in, value trade you early, and snowball the game there. That's why when I took over, my iteration of Hantu Data Vault, I noticed the Richmond list didn't have any Battlefield Marines, and I was like, man, like, it feels really bad when they just like ECL into my thing, or I have to start with a hurt guy. Let me add in this, and it was really good, and we saw other people start to do that. So having intent between those drops is huge, and Luke has 3 power, kind of insulates you a little bit. Obviously now with Gungi, you can kind of get blown out a little bit, but such is life. Then young Padawan, probably best in slot here, right? Because you get the Force. Now you're starting with a 3/4. Very, very good. Our 3-job slots, Ezra, great value Force unit that can cheat action so we can get initiative back, because this deck is going to be losing initiative a little bit because it's taking extra action when it wants to bump up. Cheating out actions, Ezra and Maz can maybe let you keep the initiative. So, ooh, we zoomed in a little bit. How did that happen? Let's try to not do that. What's next? Millennium Falcon, great closer, great into other space decks, and if you have the Force, it's now a 4/5 in space. can wear an Anakin in the late game, very good. Obi-Wan, 3/5 Force Jedi for 3. Great stats for its slot. Sentinel is super relevant in keeping yourself protected. Where's General Blade? Sanctioner Shuttle, here's one. I think a lot of people are going, and we'll talk more about this in Meaningful Interaction. I think a lot of people are going to want to take a Gungi, throw a General's Blade on it, and beat your head in. So how do we avoid that? Well, we try to capture it. I think this card's going to be very good. It's good off Bounty Hunter's Quarry. And that's another thing. Look at how many 3 drops we have. 2 and 3 drops. That is good for our Bounty Hunter's Quarry. Venestra, never heard of her, but Venestra, right? She can come into play. She can come into play ready under the right circumstances, rebuild your force, and pump herself after. I think that's really good. Spare the target instead of waylay because we have a bounty. General's Blade. Sometimes we want a high roll. Putting General's Blade on an early drop can get the game snowballed. Putting a General's Blade on Obi turns him into a real boy, and he can get crack-a-lackin'. Ahsoka, this is here to be a pesky Force user. Honestly, like, this slot could be Akira, and this is where we could play more 3 drops like Hu Yang. I think Ahsoka is best one paired with more discard, but Ahsoka is a tempo play. She's still a good body even at 4. Gets our force going. We can pump her up into a 4/6. That's pretty good. We want sticky units. We want interaction. More on that. We want to set up a board where our Plo Koon can come in and get Crackalakin. And then we have our value high drops. Qui-Gon, pretty insane ability. He can come in, take 2 things kind of out of the equation. Or if he's around, like he's really annoying if your opponent has to take him out. These are our power plays, right? Kellen, a nice 2 for 1. The base is there because I think the other yellow base is pretty awful, and we need a force base to pair. And then I could go through the whole sideboard, but things I'm thinking about: Dogfight to Crystal Caves earlier, things like that. Blue leader value play, yada yada yada. Okay, so that is the intent behind every card. Good exercise. You could do that in any one. We did it a little bit when we were exploring the Blue Vader, right? Examples would be we want some ramp to pair with him. Which leader? We talked about why. Those are intent things. So they kind of meld in a little bit, but that's a good exploration of that concept. All right, and the final concept is plan for meaningful interaction. I think that sometimes we can get really caught up in either some magical Christmas land lines or kind of best case scenario instead of kind of really honing in on what could come up. And I've talked about it in this video already sprinkled in, but playing interactive cards like Waylay or removal spells or Spark. I think those are really important. And I had a really good point that I wanted to bring up about plan for meaningful interaction. And that is, and we'll go back to this Obi list actually. And you'll kind of see one, I would say, flaw, right? We only have 5 space units. And one of the reasons for that is we need force users to attack, right? We need force users to attack to get our engine online. And so one thing that can be a pitfall in this new Legends of the Force meta is not being aware that your opponent may not be on that force plan. They might not be all ground. And so planning for meaningful interaction, things like sanction a shuttle or bounce or some kind of removal, it's okay to be a little lopsided as long as you have a plan for the other arena, right? Something we did at Gen Con Indy a million years ago was we didn't have a lot of space. We just entrenched something in space and we kind of ignored it, or we barraged it. We save our we play open fires for fast falcons and things like that, or people are sideboarding bombing runs, right? Things like that. So planning for meaningful interaction. These new force decks might be a little light on space because they're trying to index on that. I think that could be a pitfall. I'd probably, when I go to finish this Obi deck, I'm sure that I'll have to make some hard decisions and have some things that aren't gonna trigger my base. And I might have to have lines where I start a little slower because you still need to play with the thought in mind that your opponent is going to do things against you. Like Blue Leader right now is in the sideboard. kind of, you don't want to make the 5-drop blue leader all the time because he wouldn't get the Obi benefit, but it's still an insane card. It's very good up bounty hunter scoring. Probably going to make it back in the list, right? Things like that. So planning for meaningful interaction is the first step in kind of finding the pitfalls of your deck and finding ways to fight against strategies, because we're not going to know the meta. It's going to be kind of this new thing, so you're going to have to do some anticipation. Man, the Sanderson fan in me just in my head said anticipation spren. Shout out to my Stormlight Archives buddies. But yeah, so planning for meaningful interaction is just a way of saying, like, don't be all in on just one thing. Have a way to stop your opponent, right? Like, for instance, the Unity of Purpose Rex deck, that really only works if your opponent does not interact with you, and that would be exploiting a pitfall in decks. We saw like Vader Yellow make a splash at Mini. It didn't top 8, but it had like a good top 16 kind of smattering, right? That deck, the BN guys made it so it could deal with some interaction, but like earlier iterations of that deck was like, well, if my opponent can't stop what I'm doing, I'm going to snowball. If they can, it feels really bad. And then the iteration, I think that the BN guys was, they planned a little bit more for that meaningful interaction. They were able to insulate themselves a little bit, and we saw them do well with it. So that would be what I'm talking about there. And I've already pointed to some examples. This video is already getting long because I like to talk, so we will wrap it up. All right, so that is three principles, tips that you can use to build better decks in this Legends of the Force meta, or for your PQs at the end of the month. I think that it is always important to review our process. I think these are things that I tell myself, so that way I can be better at it and keep these things in mind when building new decks. And so I thought that it'd be helpful for y'all to see. Hit me in the comments with if there's a principle that spoke to you more, or an example of one of the principles that I might have missed or that you think would be helpful for other people. I'd love to hear it. Good luck, everyone. I hope we get more spoilers soon. I can't wait to start meaningfully building once we have some more cards. So good luck, y'all.